We have reached the second session of the design of bearings, where we will discuss about the anti-friction bearings in particular. So in the previous classes we were discussing about the journal bearing. To be specific, they belongs to the sliding contact type of bearing. Now the most common type of bearing which we have seen across our daily life is the anti-friction bearings, otherwise called as the ball bearings, etc. So we'll discuss about the anti-friction bearings. We will see what are the specialities, how it's beneficial. So if you look at this particular figure, you can see that this picture consists of different types of bearing. All these types of bearings will be explained in the coming slides. So you can see we have got set of balls. There are certain set of bearings which are designed for thrust loads. Some are designed for radial loads, like that. And we can see, apart from the balls, we can see that spherical balls, we can see that there are cylinders also. Okay, now let's discuss in detail about the specialty. So basically bearings are generally designed based upon the radial loads, thrust loads, or the combination. Even if you consider the general bearing, or even if we are going for the anti-friction bearings, they are basically designed on these three aspects. These are the three most important loads that we have to consider while we design bearings. Now, what is the speciality of this anti-friction bearing, or why it's called as the anti-friction? The main reason why it is being called, just because of the very low amount of friction that is being offered. That means these bearings offers a very low friction, so that it aids the motion, circular motion. It supports the circular motion. With minimum amount of friction, the circular motion will take place. So in order to do that, in order to get such kind of low friction, the two components that we use are the ball or the rollers. These are the two types of components that we use. Now, how they offer such low values of friction? Because we are not even considering the value of friction. That much low values are being provided by these balls or the roller. Now the question is, how these lower values of frictions are obtained? The answer is very simple. When you take a sphere, and if you take a curved surface or a horizontal surface, the point of contact is only a particular point, or the rotation is about a particular point. That means if we consider a horizontal plate and a sphere, we can see that here we have only a point contact. So since only there is a point contact, the amount of friction which is being developed at that particular location is very, very small. That's the actual case. Now, that's the case of ball bearings. Now what about the sphere? In sphere we have a line contact. There also the amount of area that is being in contact is very small. There also we have a very, or because of that we have only a very low amount of friction. Now let's see what is the nomenclature, basic nomenclature of a ball bearing, because this is the most common bearing that we came across in our day-to-day life. So if you take the cross section of a ball bearing, we can see that we have got first of all, the most important component of the ball bearings are the balls. These are the balls. They are arranged in a circular manner in equidistance. And this is the cross section, and this is the exploded view. This is the exploded view. If you look here, we can see that apart from these balls, we have got a separate or a retainer. They are otherwise called as a retainer. These retainers are the one which holds these balls in its position without allowing it to move to any either directions. These retainers prevent the balls to maintain the position. Right? Now we have got inner ring, or otherwise called as the inner race, or we have the outer race, otherwise called as the outer ring ball race. So other two basic components are the inner race and outer race, and the balls are arranged in between the inner and outer race and are held together using the separator. And if you look at the inner diameter of the inner race, that is called as the bore, and we have the outside diameter. Sometimes the outer ring must be maybe rotated. Sometimes it might be the inner one. Both possibilities can be achieved using this. Inner rings can rotate or the outer ring can rotate. Both can also rotate. No issues. So the ball bearings has got such kind of features, and these portions are called as the, otherwise called as the shoulders. They are called as the shoulders. So this is the basic brief nomenclature that we require in order to understand the design of the ball bearing. And if you look at this exploded view, we can see that this is the outer race, this is the inner race, and we can see these balls are arranged in an equidistant manner, and they are held together using the separator, and these separators are joined together using these small pins. These pins can be seen here. And to be specific, if you look at the to look very closely at the point of contact, don't feel that the curvature of the inner race or the outer race is very much similar to that of the sphere. It's completely different. You can see here there is only a point contact. There you can see a complete difference in the curvature. One curvature will be like this, the other one will be something like this, right? So still there is only a point contact, right? Now moving forward, what are the types of bearings that we come across? These are some of the pictures, and if you look at the pictures you can understand many things. Here this is a deep groove ball bearing, single row. We can have double row also. That is not included in this figure. Double row means it will come something like this, but this is not a double row deep groove ball bearing. The self-aligning ball bearing, because it can align even if there is a small misalignment in the system. And if you look at this, the second one is the angular contact ball bearing. You might wonder why it is called as the angular contact, because if you look at the sleeve, it is having a shape like this, something like this, right? That means even if there is a small misalignment or there is an angular tilt happening in the system, this sleeve can slide to both the sides and take care of the change in the angle. So they are called as the angular contact ball bearing. Now we have the roller bearings. If you look at the roller bearings, you can see that we are using the rollers. Rollers are arranged in an equidistant manner. Similarly, these rollers are arranged in a tapered manner. We have the tapered roller bearings. So these are being used when there is an angle between the shaft or something like that. And if you look at the spherical bearings, we can see that it looks like a cylinder, though it is not a cylinder. It has a shape like this, a bulge shape, something like this. They are called as the spherical bearings. Or otherwise, we can say that these balls are being merged with the cylinders. We'll get a spherical bearings. So here also we have got two layers. And if you look at these two bearings, they are something different from that of the other bearings that we have discussed till now. What is the specialty of these two bearings? See, they are called as the thrust bearings. Thrust bearings. Though I have shown all these pictures except these thrust bearings in a vertical manner, and these two bearings, ball bearings, thrust bearings, I have shown in a horizontal manner. The reason is very simple, because these two bearings are designed to take the thrust load, axial loads. So don't get confused. Thrust in the sense means axial loads. Axial load. They are mainly designed to take the axial loads. So these bearings are not, because here the load is going to act in this manner. They are going to act in this manner. So they are designed to take up more and more axial loads, or otherwise called as the thrust loads. See, doesn't mean that the other bearings are not designed for axial loads. They can also carry some amount of axial load. They are not purely based upon the axial loads. All the other bearings except the thrust bearings has the main component. The main component is the radial load. But when it comes to the case of thrust bearing, the main component is the axial load. But when we design the other bearings other than the thrust bearings, we have to consider the radial load as well as the thrust load also. So let's go through some features of the bearings. Now, what are the speciality of ball bearings? We have already discussed, and we have stated that it has spherical balls arranged together in an equidistant manner, which has a point contact, and the load transfers from the outer ring through the sphere to the inner. That's how it transfers the load. Now, since there is only a point contact, the amount of friction that is developed is very small, and it can spin about that particular point. That's a small point. That means, since if you consider a sphere like this, one load is applied here, it is being transferred at this particular point. That means we can consider these 2 points as stationary. Then what happens is, it can spin about this particular point, thereby transfers the rotational motion. Okay, so such kind of spinning action takes place in the case of a ball bearings. And when we come to the thrust bearing, we can see that they are mainly used for low speed applications, and they cannot handle much radial load. Doesn't mean that it will not carry radial load. No, it can carry some amount of radial load, but it is not designed to carry the radial loads. Some wheelchairs, etc., uses the thrust bearings. The most common type of bearing that we see in our day-to-day life is the ball bearing. It can be a single draw ball bearings or the double draw ball bearings. Now, if you look at the roller bearings, we have already stated that it has a roller, and the speciality of the roller is that if you take the front view of the roller, we can see that when the roller touches the ground, we have a line contact. So what happens when there is a line contact? Still, the friction is very small, but since the contact is a line contact, the load which is being transferred is split across the line. Throughout the line, the load is being distributed in a line, thereby it can carry more and more amount of radial loads. When you compare the ball bearings with that of the spherical bearings, we can say that spherical bearings can carry more amount of load. That is a speciality. And they are not designed to carry much thrust loads, axial loads. They are much thrust loads. So this much, the word much is very important. Can carry some amount of radial load. And the main advantage of these ball bearings are, these roller bearings are, they are easy to mount and dismount. Assemble and dismantling is very easy in the case of ball bearings, and they are mainly used for high load applications like conveyor belt rollers, like that. Heavy load applications, we use the roller bearings. So we will look whether whether the ball bearings are suitable for our application. If it is not suitable based upon the loads, then definitely we have to move from the ball bearings to roller bearings. That's how the design proceeds. Now we have the roller thrust bearings. As we know that it can carry large amount of axial loads or thrust loads, and they are mainly used for the suspensions between transmission between gears, between the housing and the rotating shaft. And the helical gears must be the most important transition element that is being used in the transmission systems, and they have the angled teeth. So the roller thrust bearings are very much suitable for such kind of application. So if you compare all together, if you compare the efficiency or the capacity of different bearings for the radial as well as the axial load, and also for the misaligned capability, we can conclude like this. So the single draw ball bearing, they are good for the radial loads, and they can carry some amount of axial loads, but they are not that good for the to take up some amount of misalignment. For double draw ball bearings are also, they can carry excellent radial loads, and they can carry some amount of axial loads, but the misaligned capacity is poor. And if you look here, we can say that most of the bearings are excellent to carry the radial loads, and for the tapered bearings, they can carry axial loads For the angular contact bearing also, that means tapered and angular contact, they can carry axial loads also. If you look at the axial load carrying capacities, basically they comes in the range of fair or even poor condition. They are not that much suited for the carrying the axial load except the thrust bearings. Thrust bearings are excellent to carry the axial loads, but they are fair to carry the radial loads. And if you look at the misalignment capacity, you can see that most of the bearings comes in the fair zone, fair or the poor zone, and only the spherical bearings has got some excellent misalignment capability. Because even if there is a misalignment, the spherical bearings can be considered to be applied in that particular application. So this particular table gives us a lot of information about the efficiency of the bearings. So how the selection has to be done. Suppose if you have a misalignment in the system, definitely you cannot go for any kind of single row ball bearings or a angular contact bearings, because they are not suited for the carrying the misalignment. So if there is a misalignment, definitely the one you have to select is the spherical bearing. So this is a table which gives us a lot of information regarding the capacity of the bearing. Now here comes the bearing life. It's the most important thing that you should understand, bearing life. So since this bearing is going on rotating all through its life, how the life of the bearing is being defined, that's the most important thing. Basically, the bearing failure is considered as or stated as spalling or the pitting. So if there is a pitting to an area of 0.254 mm square, if you observe a pitting of 0.254 mm square in the bearing, it is considered as a failed bearing. That is one methodology of understanding the failure or considering the failure. So a failure area of 0.254. Now comes the life. Definitely the life of the bearing is based upon the number of revolutions or the amount of hours or the amount of time that it is being used in the operation. So you just think in like this: if a bearing rotates at a speed of 500 rpm, that means it is undergoing 500 rotations in 1 minute, and if it works for 5 hours daily, you just imagine how many rotations it has undergone. So if this particular bearing is being used for 365 days, you just imagine the number of revolutions that this bearing has undergone. So the range of rotation, number of rotation is in the range of millions. It's not in the range of thousands or 10,000s, or not even in the case of lakhs. It's in the range of millions. So basically the life of the bearings are mainly called in million revolution, MR, otherwise called as the MR, million revolution. Usually it comes in that particular range. And when we comes to the case of the rated life, there are two methods or the two ways in which the life of the bearing is being stated. One is the L10 life and second one is the L50 life. One is the L10 life, second one is the L50 life. It's very simple. It's the life in million revolution. Here's the life in millions revolution. That a bearing, a group of bearing where only 10% fails. Suppose you have a bearing, a big bearing, you just consider that, and you have some amount of 50 balls in it. You have a big bearing with 15 number of balls in it, and you make this bearing operate, and one particular ball fails. Still you are allowing the bearing to continue in the operation, and you will continue this process until 10% of the ball fails. That means if you take 50 balls, you will make this bearing work until 5 balls fails. If 50 is the total. If 50 is total, the 10% is 5 balls. So you will make the system work until 10% of the ball fails. So the amount of revolution or the number of revolutions that has covered during this period is called as the L10 life. That is also in millions revolution. And definitely L50 you can define. It is the millions revolution covered by a bearing when it's 50% of the bearing fails or the balls fails. That's how it is being stated. So it can also be stated that 5 into L10 is also called as L50. So L50 is otherwise called as the average life. Average life or median life. These are the different methods in which the life is being specified. Now comes the case of the load rating. So two important load rating we have to consider. One is the static load carrying capacity and second one is the dynamic load carrying capacity. One is the static load carrying capacity and second one is the dynamic load carrying capacity. So the definition is very simple. You are giving static means the ball is in rest condition and it is loaded. You are increasing the value of W. System is working. Static condition, you are applying the load W and the diameter is D. You apply the load until the deformation becomes 0.0001 times of D. So in simple words we can say that it is the maximum amount of radial load that a ball can or a bearing can carry without undergoing a deformation of 0.001 times of D. So if the bearing undergoes a deformation beyond this, it is considered as failure. That means the static load carrying capacity is C0. So the maximum value of radial load that a bearing can withstand by undergoing a deformation of 0.0001 times of D. Strain. Strain is the change in diameter divided by original diameter. So this change in diameter is the one which is being stated here. We expect only this much amount of deformation. So that is called as the static load carrying capacity. But the dynamic means system is in motion, it is continuously rotating. So definitely the dynamic load carrying capacity is something based upon the millionth revolution. Now the definition is very simple. The bearing dynamic capacity C is defined as the constant stationary load which a rolling bearing can theoretically endure for a basic rating life of 1 million revolution. That means the answer is very simple. You have a bearing and you are making this particular bearing to operate. This bearing is undergoing operation, right? So it is carrying some amount of radial load. You are increasing the load. So the condition is that when it reaches 1 million revolution, it should fail. It should fail exactly at 1 million revolution. So the amount of load that is being carried when undergoing a standard rated life of 1 million revolution is called as the dynamic load carrying capacity. So these are the two important loads that we have to consider while we go to the design, and these two values are given in the data handbook. And finally we have the equivalent radial load. The equivalent radial load is something like we are clubbing the radial load as well as the axial load with the help of some factors x and v, x, v, y. These are the factors, and these factors will be explained while we discuss the design procedure. So based upon the radial load and axial load, we calculate the equivalent load Fe, or otherwise it is also called as P. Equivalent load will calculate, and based upon this equivalent load C and C0, we are going to design the bearing. And for your understanding, bearing means these bearings are listed. Standard diameters and bearings are listed in the manufacturer's catalog, and we are using the manufacturer's catalog to design the bearing. So in the next class I will explain the design procedure for the ball bearings. So you kindly go through this video and take down required notes, and we will discuss the design procedure in the next class. Till then, bye. Thank you.